All right, Alexander, let's talk about Zelensky and Zaluzhny. We're back at this again, huh? Zelensky and Zaluzhny. So Zaluzhny accompanied Lamy, the foreign secretary, and Blinken on their recent trip to Kiev. Zaluzhny was there. And Politico, the other day, they run an article which claims that the debacle in Kursk, which is, as we have been saying pretty much from day one, we've kind of been vindicated. We can do a victory lap, can't we? I mean, we've been vindicated. Everyone is acknowledging that Kursk is a debacle. The report from Politico is that Zaluzhny agreed with us, and he said, "Don't do Kursk. Kursk is going to be a debacle." Interesting timing for Politico to run this story. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah, this is a fascinating story, and I want to say something. I mean, the Politico story, there's an awful lot of dots which are just extremely difficult to join up, because what the Politico story says is that Zelensky, at some point, we don't know exactly, he doesn't tell us when, came up with this idea for this operation in Kursk. And it makes it pretty clear that it was Zelensky's idea, specifically Zelensky's idea. Remember, Zelensky's not a military person, but he hatched this idea for the operation in Kursk. And apparently a lot of Ukrainian generals told him, don't do this. And the most important of those Ukrainian generals who told him, don't do this, was Zaluzhny. Now, the problem with that story is that, of course, Zaluzhny himself was sacked from his position as commander of the Ukrainian military in February. So if you take this story at face value, then that must mean that Zelensky was planning this operation in Kursk at least before February. Because otherwise, how could Zaluzhny have pushed back against it from London when he was no longer a military commander-in-chief? I mean, to me, this is the big unanswered question here, which makes absolutely no sense. Now, I find it very difficult to believe that Zelensky was really planning this operation in Kursk all the way back in February. So I think what is more likely is that, yes, probably Zaluzhny, the moment he heard about this Kursk operation, was telling everybody this is going to fail. He's a military man. He could see all the things which we saw. By the way, I would correct you about one thing. We didn't, sort of say that Kursk was going to be a debacle. We said that Kursk was going to be a debacle. We said it on the very first day. We said it would end terribly, and we can see every day that that is exactly what it is doing. So I'm sure Zaluzhny was able to see that, and he said that, and he told his friends who are still there in the military about that. And there's another senior Ukrainian officer, the commander of an airborne brigade, who was ordered to send his troops into Kursk, and this was in July, and he said, this is an incredibly bad idea. My brigade is going to get smashed. We're not going to achieve anything, and promptly got sacked. So that, by the way, suggests that the decision to launch this was actually made in July when Zaluzhny was in London, just completely out of the picture. But I'm sure that Zaluzhny, at the moment it started, was going around telling everybody this is a terrible idea. I don't believe that he was arguing. This is my own view. I don't believe he was arguing with Zelensky about this way back in February. I think that is very difficult to believe. But what he's now seeing is that this operation in Kursk has been a disaster, a debacle, exactly as he said. We've had more news this morning that the Russians have captured more villages in Kursk, that they are close to encircling the entire Ukrainian grouping in Kursk. There are reports of panic amongst some Ukrainian military units. the Russian military group of forces north, the military force that's Russian military force that is conducting the operations in Kursk, actually reported that fact on its website. Of course, that's the Russians. We don't know how accurate that is, but we've got evidence to suggest that it's probably true. So Kursk is turning into a debacle, and this is Zaluzhny's chance. So he's coming in, he's getting his friends to speak to Politico. He's done this many, many times. He's spread for years now stories in which he positions himself as the voice of reason and sanity in Ukraine against this eccentric, volatile, unstable character who is Zelensky, this dangerous amateur who makes all these reckless ideas. Zaluzhny is always there, trying to restrain him, trying to calm him down, trying to prevent him doing the reckless, irresponsible things that Zelensky wants to do. And he tried to do it over Kursk, but of course his advice again was not heeded. And we see once again that his warnings were true. And I think this is what the image that's being presented. And it's being done because I think that Zaluzhny and some other people in Kiev are saying to themselves, when this debacle plays out, when the Ukrainians are either encircled in Kursk or driven out of Kursk or whatever, this is their moment to make their move. Zelensky's reputation will be in tatters. Everything across the front lines is falling apart. There was a fascinating article in Ukrainska Pravda, Ukrainian newspaper, discussing the situation in the Pokrovsk area. And they're talking about a complete chaos in terms of the military leadership, the high command, contradictory orders, orders that bear no connection with reality, fortifications being built in the wrong places when they're completely useless, all that kind of thing. So who must we turn to in this hour of crisis, this hour of Ukraine's need? Well, Zaluzhny, he's the person, always the voice of reason, always the voice of sanity, and the person who also has the support of the West. And that's why he comes to Kiev alongside Blinken and Lamy. He's there. We see the pictures of him at the railway station. And he's the man who will save the situation for Ukraine in its great hour of need. All we have to do is to bring him back, put Zelensky in his place, and all will be well. And I think this is the narrative that is now being prepared.
Yeah, after the long-range missile strikes into pre-2014 Russia, after this narrative, whatever may happen, whether there's a green light for the long-range missile strikes into Russia or not, after this narrative is it done with, the next narrative appears to be Zaluzhny. The next wonder weapon, there we go, the next wonder weapon is going to be Zaluzhny. He's going to be the next wonder weapon that the UK, it looks like the UK is lining up behind him, or at least there are some forces in the UK that are lining up behind him. Makes perfect sense since he's in the UK right now. I mean, he's the ambassador in the UK, so obviously he's going to start getting support from the UK deep state that's involved in this conflict, and maybe Blinken is going to start getting behind Zaluzhny. There are calls in Ukraine, in Kiev. This has happened before in the past, but these calls, we're starting to hear these calls again, which are saying Zelensky needs to call elections or step aside. I mean, we are hearing MPs, once again, they've done this in the past, but they're starting up again, and they're saying elections or leave because, Zelensky, you have made an absolute, complete mess of things. So, Zaluzhny may be the wonder weapon, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely. There was a period that lasted roughly from the moment when the Ukrainian counteroffensive of last summer failed, went through the period in Avdiivka, the fighting in Avdiivka, when it looked as if Zelensky's position was becoming increasingly unstable. And then things sort of stabilized. Zelensky sacked Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny failed to respond. There was no move within the various brigades, the nationalist brigades, and Zelensky was able to go ahead and extend his term without elections. And it looked for a time as if his position was secure. I'm guessing, by the way, that he got a lot of support from the US at that time. And I get the sense that that period is now ending, that with the imminent collapse in Kursk and quite plausibly the fall in Покровsk in the next few weeks, then we're going to see again the demands mounting for a change in Kiev. And of course, just as quickly say, the Russian intelligence agency could probably just stir the pot here. But they've been spreading stories for some time that the Americans are looking for a replacement to Zelensky, and that Zaluzhny is their preferred choice.
Right.
I mean, I doubt that they have actual information about that, but that's what they're saying.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the UK is looking at. Once again, he's in the UK, so obviously there are some people supporting Zaluzhny. But what the support that Zelensky got at the time, wasn't that when Nuland went to Kiev and she sorted everything out?
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, he got the support of the Americans. Nuland, as you correctly say, went to Ukraine. She spent some time in Kiev. She gave an incredibly provocative press conference, I remember, or at least address to the media.
Outside in the snow, right? That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. In which, by the way, she basically hinted at the deep strikes, missile strikes against Russia. She was already floating that idea then. And it was clear afterwards that Zelensky had got the Americans backing, and that helped stabilize the situation in Kiev for a few months.
Yeah, he got the backing, but it looks like he got the backing with the condition that we're not going to completely remove Zaluzhny. We're going to send him to London, and he's going to be hanging out there, and let's see what happens.
That was a temporary thing. Exactly. It was a temporary thing. The Americans were not ready at that time for a change in Kiev, and Zaluzhny was parked in London. So, but now he's been brought back.
Yeah. And Zaluzhny, whenever you talk about Zaluzhny, you also talk about Poroshenko and Klitschko, because they're the ones that are aligned with Zaluzhny.
That's right. That's exactly correct. I mean, Zaluzhny and Poroshenko are clearly very closely aligned with each other. I'd say, if anything, I put it more simply than that, I'd say that Zaluzhny was originally Poroshenko's man. I mean, Poroshenko was president of Ukraine, as we know, before Zelensky was. He built up the Ukrainian military. He basically, I think, promoted people like Zaluzhny and made sure that they reached the high positions that Zaluzhny did indeed reach. And I think there's clearly a connection between them. And Klitschko, who's the mayor of Kiev, he's also part of this group. So I think this is the group that's now maneuvering and is preparing to strike, because they can see that, the writing is on the wall in Kiev, in Kursk rather. The writing is on the wall in Покровsk, in Donbass, and they're looking for someone to take over. By the way, I mean, this is all very interesting, but for the moment, it still looks like a game of musical chairs, getting people in and out, Zelensky in, Zaluzhny in, Zelensky out, all of that. It doesn't answer the question of what Ukraine is going to do going forward. Because one thing I have to say is that none of these people, Zaluzhny, Poroshenko, Klitschko, are coming up with any real plan for turning Ukraine's situation round. This was true, by the way, when Zaluzhny was Ukraine's military commander. I mean, he always presented himself as the voice of reason and sanity and all of that. But he never came up with a plan, an actual plan that might have delivered any kind of long-term victory or solution for Ukraine's underlying problems. I say this, I was following very closely what Zaluzhny was doing, but it was always passive and always negative, trying to push back against Zelensky's crazy plans, which eventually, by the way, Zaluzhny always went along with. Just say, I mean, he always did in the end, but never coming up with any real proposals about how to conduct the war of his own. And I still don't see anything like that from this group.
No, it's just a change of face, right? So you kick the can down the road and you hope for something to get better. But yeah, I agree with you. Zaluzhny was no military genius or mastermind, and he didn't have any ideas that were different from Zelensky. Zaluzhny would basically say the same thing that Zelensky would say, but he would just package it differently, which was, we need more weapons and we need more money. That was basically all he would come up with. Give us more weapons, give us more money. If we had all of these weapons, we could win, which is no different than what Zelensky says. But so Zelensky goes to wrap up the video, Zelensky goes to New York. He is going to speak at the UN Security Council. At least those are the reports that we're getting, is that he's going to speak at the UN and he's going to address the Security Council. That's what I understand is going to happen. And he is going to meet not only with the Biden White House, but he is scheduled to meet with Harris and possibly even Trump. So what do you think is going on there? And how important is Kursk, holding on to Kursk, for Zelensky as he goes to the United States? Because I imagine that one of Zelensky's biggest concerns is that something bad happens in Kursk while he's in the United States, and that may jeopardize his push to get the green light for long-range missile strikes into pre-2014 Russia, because the media, they've been running the same Kursk narrative in a loop, which is Kursk was brilliant. Kursk was brilliant. It was an incredible tactical victory for Ukraine, but they never get into the specifics of what's happening in Kursk because the collective West mainstream media, they understand that Kursk is a complete debacle and they don't want to get into the details. They're just trying to hold on to this narrative of the genius behind Kursk for as long as they can, but that narrative is crumbling. So what's this trip to the States all about?
Right. Well, first of all, about Kursk. I mean, if Kursk collapses whilst Zelensky is in New York, or before Zelensky is in New York, it is a complete disaster for him. I mean, we already see how Zaluzhny and all the others are manoeuvring to pin the blame on him, and they will succeed in that because Zelensky has taken credit for it. I mean, he took credit for the great success in Kursk. If Kursk ends in a debacle, then what it's going to do inevitably is it's going to feed the already mounting doubts that exist in Western capitals about his ability to lead Ukraine through this crisis. They're going to say, look, Zelensky clearly doesn't know what he's doing. He started this operation in Kursk. He told us it was going to succeed. It's failed and failed disastrously. It's time that we started thinking seriously about someone else. So he has to hold on to in Kursk for the next couple of weeks whilst he's in New York. And there are reports that he's telling Syrskyi, the current military chief, to make sure that whatever happens in the war over the next couple of weeks, two things don't happen. One is a complete collapse in Kursk, and the second is a collapse in Pokrovsk, and to send all available troops and reinforcements to these places and to forget about everything else. So that is his overriding political priority now. As to what he's going to do in New York, it's going to be more of the same. He's coming with his so-called victory plan. I understand that the victory plan is not actually a military plan exactly. It's all about, trying to do all kinds of complicated and clever diplomatic maneuvers. He wants to have another peace conference in November. He hasn't yet found a venue. He's been trying to get the Indians to agree, then the Saudis, then the Swiss again. The Swiss, by the way, have said no this time. They had they had a bad experience with the last one. They don't want to repeat that all over again. But anyway, he's coming up with his peace plan. He wants more weapons, as you say. He wants deep missile strikes. He's wanting, according to the Russian media, a commitment, an agreement from the West that Ukraine should join NATO before the end of this year. Preposterous idea. But I mean, he's coming up with all of this and all of these demands, and he's going to try and package that as his great plan for victory. He's going to try to tell the Americans and the others, look, Ukraine is in the right. Our territorial integrity is threatened. We are the victims of aggression. You must continue to support us. You've said in the past, that you'll be with us as long as it takes. You must fulfill your promise, and you don't have any reasons to change that, because here's my plan. Here's my great victory plan. All you need to do is to authorize me, to give me the green light to conduct an unrestricted missile war against Russia, to do whatever I want anywhere on the battlefront. You've got to give me every single weapon that exists in all your arsenals and more still. You've got to escalate to the point of, well, I don't even want to say which point. You've got to get everybody around the world to line up and agree with me, and then victory will be ours. Back me 150%, 200%, and I can still deliver you victory. And I think there are still some people who fall for this line, Keir Starmer in Britain being one of them. But I think with other people, it's starting to wear very thin.
Yeah, I agree with you. Some people fall for the line, like Keir Starmer and a lot of analysts, because they don't really have much choice, do they? They've invested so much into Project Ukraine and the fiction that Ukraine ever had a chance to win this conflict. They never did have a chance. No. And what else can they do? I mean, what else can Keir Starmer do? Right? I mean, this is all he's got left.
Well, I mean,
he's got to go for this. Yeah.
He's got to go for this because he ignored advice from the Foreign Office to back off and to go, as they put it, back to the center of the pack in terms of support for Ukraine. He ignored that. He tried to lobby on Ukraine's behalf with the Americans, and apparently they weren't happy. I mean, they might make a decision which corresponds with the one he wants, but if so, they will do that because of internal discussions. And the Americans did not welcome the British intruding themselves into their internal discussions. The French, the Germans, the Italians are cooling rapidly now on the whole Ukraine project. And in Starmer's case, his poll ratings are collapsing in Britain faster than I have ever seen a newly elected prime ministers do. He is involved in a scandal. I mean, it's taken just a few weeks, but he's involved in a scandal because he's been taking, freebies, donations of expensive clothes and suits and tickets to Taylor Swift events and football matches and all that from all sorts of rich donors. So you're absolutely right. I mean, he's boxed in. He's got to go on plugging Zelensky because he embraced Zelensky literally in the first week that he became prime minister, even inviting Zelensky to a British cabinet meeting. I mean, he didn't listen to you. He didn't learn or understand that there is such a thing as the Zelensky curse. He embraced it. I mean, it was bizarre. And of course, it's already playing. It's already having its deadly effect on him.
Yeah. All right. We will end it there. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop. Pick up some merch like the shirts that we are wearing today in this video. The link is in the description box down below. Take care.